Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. It is Saturday, so we're shooting another financial education video. On Wednesdays is when we do our portfolio reviews. And for those of you who are new to my channel, my name is Paul Novak and I absolutely love all things personal finance. And my goal for this channel is really to just share tips and tricks that I've learned with personal financing to help all of you make more money. And this week I am super excited to do this video. We're going to talk about really the basics of just how to get ahead financially. And for those of you who follow my channel, you know I like to keep my content geared towards beginners and keep it simple. I am a very simple guy and I do not like complicated. And if you find these videos helpful, I'd always encourage you to smash that like button and subscribe. And this week we actually started a Facebook group talking about saving and investing, all geared towards beginners and really everything personal finance. And my goal in creating this group is just to bring a community of people together where we can all learn from each other. So I'm going to place a link down below to that Facebook group if it's something that you're interested in. And as I always state too, if you're interested in starting to save or invest, I've got a ton of different links down below. A lot of them come with promotions that either have free cash or offer free stocks. So if that's something you're interested in, check it out. All right, and in this video, we got a lot of great stuff that we're going to cover. So we're going to go through the 4 different aspects of a cash flow statement. We're going to define the difference between an asset and a liability. We're going to show an example of how you can really get ahead financially without having this super large income. We're going to define what the difference is between lower, middle, and upper class, and I'm going to do it with a different take than probably what you're thinking. I'm going to give a brief description of what the different asset classes are, and then I'm going to kind of close out with what are my assets, what have I purchased, and how have I leveraged those assets to get ahead. And as I've stated in other videos, remember I've got chapters down below, so if there's anything in specifics that you find interesting, you can just click on that chapter. Do not feel the need to watch the whole video. And with that being said, let's get into it. So a lot of the info that I'm going to cover in this video comes from the books Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and he's actually got a series. The first one is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. This is kind of the last one in the series, his guide to investing, but I highly, highly recommend reading these books. I think the content in them is awesome.
And I'm going to try and not be super dramatic like my sister tends to be.
But seriously, once I read through the stuff that was in here, Rich Dad, Poor Dad specifically, it really did change my life and it's changed my perspective on how I look at investing. And really, that's what we're going to go through and cover today. All right, so before we get into all those concepts and talk through investing, I want to talk through what some of those aspects of the cash flow statement are. 2 of them are extremely basic, not going to spend a lot of time on them. The first one is income, which I'm sure you're all aware of, money coming into your household. And then the second one is expenses, which is going to be money that flows out of the household. And the next 2 can be a little bit tricky, but I'm going to break them down as simple as I know how. And the first one that I want to talk about are assets. And an asset, I'm going to define it as anything that you own that generates income. And I honestly don't care what it's worth, and an asset could honestly be worth nothing. All it needs to do is be something that's going to generate income. And I say this to make you think differently. You know, most people when they talk about assets, a common phrase I've heard a ton in my life is that your house will be your biggest asset. And the second thing that I've heard will be your biggest asset is your vehicle. Now, I'm going to ask a question. Are those really assets? Because the last time I checked, those 2 items do nothing but generate bills. So if I look at your house, right, you get a mortgage, you've got homeowner's insurance, you've got property taxes to pay, bill, bill, bill. There is nowhere in there where I actually see you generating income. And now let's go to a vehicle, right? If you buy a car, your vehicle's got a loan payment tied to it. It's got car insurance you've got to pay. You've got to fill it up with gas. Again, bill, bill, bill. So nowhere in there are you generating income. So in this video, if you hear me use the term asset, I want you to think of something that's actually generating you income. And now I think this is a good time to talk about the last term that I want to use when it comes to cash flow, and that is a liability. And I'm defining a liability as something that generates an expense, but it's a large amount. It's borrowed money. It's something that you cannot pay all at once. So again, let's think of mortgages, loans, outstanding credit card debt. Those don't just generate a one-time bill. Because those are so large, they make reoccurring payments, and a lot of times those payments come with interest, right? Because you're borrowing that money. And using this definition, now think about it. Your house and your car are probably more like liabilities than they are assets. And now I want to talk about different classifications of people, and I'm actually going to use illustrations to describe this. I want to go through lower class, middle class, and upper class. And I'd ask a question. How do you define these classes today? My guess is you define them by income level. I want to share again a completely different perspective on this. So as we go through this today, I'm not going to define those classes by how much money they make. I'm actually going to define those classes by how much money they spend. And I'll explain why I'm going to do that. And it's not because income doesn't matter at all, but when I'm going through these examples, spend levels are much more important when we talk about getting ahead than what income levels are. And the first example that I'm going to give, so who here has heard of famous athletes and lottery winners that are broke as a joke? You hear stories about this all of the time. And honestly, based on the income that they've made, I would say every single one of us in the traditional sense of the word would consider those people to be upper class. And again, if you look at what they've made based on income, I can see why you'd consider them upper class, but I'm going to re-stress this for this video. We're not focused on how much they make, we're focused on how much they spend. That's what's going to define what classification somebody fits into. And I'm going to give you a different example to kind of flip the script on this. So I'm going to place this article up here on the screen of a Facebook friend of mine that I've been connecting with that's found a way to generate $62,000 a year from rental income. And to me, what's most impressive is he's done this making only $51,000 a year as a max salary as a machine operator. The other thing that I find extremely impressive is he's done all of this. He started buying his first rentals at 23 years old, and he's now up to that $62,000 being only 27. So I'm going to place a link to his article down below from the Business Insider. I'm also going to place a link to his Facebook group, which again is a great community to talk about investing. And now what I want to do is get into the visuals of describing lower, middle, and upper class and why spending is so much more important than income. And I think with the visuals, it'll just make a lot more sense. All right, so I'm going to start here with lower class. And when I use these visuals, the first thing that you're going to have is a job. Right, and as you can see, that job is generating income. So we've got cash flow coming in. But then as we carry out and we see our expenses, you notice here that the money that's coming in from the job equals the expenses, and then all the income is spent. So really how I'm defining lower class is somebody who makes the same amount of money that they spend. When they get done, there is no money left over. And this is the definition of living paycheck to paycheck. The only way they can continue to survive is to reload from that job and continue to make more money. So that is why, as I explained earlier, it's not about how much you make, but it's more about how much you spend. Even if you have an extremely high salary, but you convert all of that salary directly into expenses and all your money's gone, you're still defined as somebody that's in lower class. Now to flip that, if I go over here to middle class, it's going to be the same thing. We're going to start with your job, But as you can see here, we are making more money. I've added more dollar signs to show that. But as we carry this through, right, their bills do not equal their income. They're actually making more than what their bills are. And this is the distinct thing that's going to take somebody from lower class and bring them up to middle class. Now, what keeps them in middle class is that they're going to take that money that they have left over because they have excess, and they're going to buy liabilities. So as you can see here, they're taking that and they're getting an auto loan and they're getting a home loan, right? And all that's going to end up doing is converting those liabilities into more bills, and yet again, all of our income is spent. And I would actually argue, because you're very self-reliant at this point on your job, you are actually in a worse financial position being somebody that's middle class than somebody that's lower class. And I'll explain why. When you're lower class, right, and your bills equal, or your income equals what your bills are, if you lost your job, you could eliminate those bills. When you make it into middle class status, you now have outstanding debt. And that outstanding debt is not going to go away if you lose your job. Even if you found a way to eliminate these bills, you'd still have these reoccurring that you've got to find a way to pay for. So really, the biggest difference between lower class and middle class is that you have excess money, but you're using that to buy liabilities. Now, here's where things shift. This is how you get ahead financially. This is the secret, or the key, if there was one. So again, we're going to look at the job, and in this job, we've got the same amount of income, right? The same dollar sign. So there's no different than the person, as far as income level, is upper class as there was in middle class. So as we carry this over here, we're going to leave the bills the same, right? So this person's making more than what they're spending in expenses. Here's where the difference comes in. That person's going to take their excess income and they're going to invest it into assets. They're going to buy assets instead of liabilities. And as I explained earlier in the video, a liability is something that's going to generate an expense. An asset's something that's going to generate income. So here's where this flips, right? Because they bought assets, now they have more income coming in. And this is going to help on multiple fronts. So not only is that income, which I'll show first, have the ability to then pay for things that they want, but it also becomes another source of income that makes you less reliant upon the job. So in this case, even if the person lost their job, right, which is still their primary source of income, they would still continue to have money flowing in from stocks, from real estate. So there are three sources of income this person has versus that traditional person that only had money coming in from their job. And the biggest difference when you talk about getting ahead financially is a person that's upper class will not use their money that they're making from their job to pay for these excess things like the car payment. They are going to take that money, they're going to buy assets, and once their assets are generating enough income to buy the things they want, that is the money that they will use to splurge or to get ahead with, not the money from their job. So ultimately what you get as you continue to do this over time is a snowball effect to where those assets just keep paying you more and more and more money until you get to a point that you don't even need your job because the assets are paying you more than what your job is. And that is truly the key to getting ahead. And then ultimately here again, we've got that income spent and that money flowing out. Okay, so that seems really simple, right? I just gave you the magic key. Just go buy assets and poof, go be wealthy. All right, so seriously, it is that simple, but it's not that simple. I think the concept's really easy to understand, but I think in putting it to practical use, this takes a little bit of work and a lot of discipline. So a few things I want to cover is if you're going to take this approach, which I would highly recommend, right? You're going to start small. Don't get discouraged when you don't see the money rolling in right away. It takes time, so you got to be patient. And I think so many people want to get rich quick and invest in something that's going to make them tons of money right out of the gates. And I've found it just doesn't work that way, right? It's very rare that you're going to find this one magical bullet that's automatically going to replace all of your income in your job. What I've found is it takes a lot of different sources of investing, and then over time, you get this snowball effect where eventually the income just continues to increase over time. So let's talk about what some of the different asset classes are. And again, keeping it simple, right? First one is going to be stocks. Second one out there is going to be bonds. The third one's going to be real estate, and those are a lot more of the traditional asset classes. I'm also going to throw in cryptocurrencies because I think as the future goes on, I think those are going to become a lot more popular, and I do see them as realistic investments in the future. And now kind of what I want to do is just share my experience and what assets we're buying that help us get ahead. Because I will state, I'm just a normal middle-class guy, living a normal life, normal family of 4. I wasn't given a huge nest egg or anything to get started. All of these assets that we've accumulated are just coming from our regular salaries, but it's actually gone pretty well up to this point. And don't laugh, because the income that we have coming in isn't crazy. But if I really look at where I was, let's even say 5 years ago, right? I really didn't have much of anything coming in to where we are today. I'm pretty proud of what we've accomplished, and it's all been taking that slow and steady and patient approach, but staying consistent with what we do. So the first one that I've got is I use a high yield savings account. We invest, our car insurance money, Christmas money, all that stuff in there. I use Yoda Bank, which is also a lot of fun, and that generates us, I'd say, anywhere from $100 to $200 a year of added income. The next one that I use, which I am super big on, is my Citi Double Cash card, my credit card. We pay the credit card off every single week because we get paid every single week. But in cashback rewards, we're getting about $1,200 a year in extra income, and all that can be invested. The next thing that we've gotten really big into is our stock portfolio. And I use Robinhood, and we started this portfolio with only $25, and that was almost a year ago. We've now been able to grow it all the way to $85,000, which to me is just craziness. But with that, the dividends that we're getting from that, we're making probably $1,300 a year in dividends coming from that portfolio. And then we've also just recently gotten into real estate, and we're in the process of closing on our first rental property. And from that, we plan to make $8,400 a year in excess income through that rental property. And I have a ton of different videos. I'm not going to place the link to each one of those individually on the channel that talk about setting up high yield savings accounts, our credit cards, our stock portfolio. If you're interested in any of that stuff, come back and check that out. And really how we continue to get ahead is we're taking all of that money and excess income that's coming in, because we don't need it right now, and we're reinvesting all of that into the market, in addition to dollar cost averaging from our paychecks every single week. And I'm not going to go through dollar cost averaging in this video, but it's probably one of the most successful investing strategies that's out there. I'll place a link up here for how to check out that video if it's something that you're interested in. And I use some of the income that comes from those assets for vacations and fun things, right? Because if you're making that excess money, what are you making it for? Not just to save all of it. But I will say that we don't come nearly close to spending all of that excess money. We are investing a lot of it. And really the last thing that I'll say is, if we've been able to do this to get ahead as just a normal family of 4, really anybody can do this. So I'd really encourage you, if you're not started investing yet, buy some assets. Use that money to get ahead. And hopefully you all found this video helpful and can use this information to start getting ahead financially. And I just want to encourage you, remember, you gotta take baby steps. Start small, but as time goes on, it will really start to compound and grow. And if you're interested in supporting my channel, right, smash that like button and subscribe. Comments are always welcome and we respond back to all comments. I've said it earlier in the video, if you're interested in starting to save or invest, check out the links below. I'd like to thank everybody for watching, and I hope to see you back here next week where we're going to talk more about saving, investing, and spending money. Have a good weekend.